Quake 2, the great Daffy Duck themed first person shooter from the late 90s. It's one of the best first person shooters ever made. You can't really see Daffy Duck, but sometimes you kind of move like Daffy Duck. It's a great game. You have a ton of different weapons, and the environments have this futuristic cyberpunk horror feel, and then they're accompanied by really cool, like high octane rock music. It's a perfect combination of setting and music to accompany your gameplay. I think my favorite thing about Quake 2, when maybe comparing it to other first person shooting games of the same ilk, is how many cool guns you get. And they're guns that are really satisfying to shoot. In some games you don't get that many guns, and in some first-person shooters, you get a lot of guns, but they're really weird guns, like weird laser-type guns. Here, the guns stay pretty basic, but they're awesome. Like automatic weapons, really powerful super shotguns that explode the enemy, guns that shoot almost like these fire projectiles. They all do different damage, they're all different at different ranges. And of course, when you're shooting, you can also run around or strafe left and right to avoid enemy attacks. This is really helpful when you're fighting more than one enemy. Like, the game is pretty easy when you're fighting one-on-one, either on easy or on medium, if you're just having a gunfight with one guy in front of you. But if it's more than one, if it's 2, 3, or even more, that's going to be a problem. Not because the enemies are super powerful, but just because they're all mediumly powered. They all take a little bit of your life, and when 3 enemies are all pointing at you, shooting you, it takes off your life quick. I mean, you will siphon your life. If you're standing right in front of like 2 or 3 enemies, your life will siphon down super quickly. You need to be constantly moving out of the way, or my favorite thing to do is to run behind walls. That's pretty much the best way to avoid enemy attacks. You also have to watch out. Some enemies, when they fall, they don't die right away. They fall down, but then they can still shoot you. So you kind of have to follow the enemy with your crosshair when they fall and make sure they're dead by shooting them again. You know an enemy is 100% dead when they explode. No worries about that. Just make sure every single enemy you shoot explodes from your powerful projectiles. There won't be any problems if every single enemy is made into pulp. I don't know where I would rate Quake 2 in terms of other first-person shooters of the same era. I mean, it's definitely a good game, but there were a lot of other good first-person shooters, like Soldier of Fortune, great game, Medal of Honor, great game, just Half-Life, whatever. I can name a million of them. And they all play more or less the same. They all kind of look the same. First-person shooting games from this era looked very similar, so it wasn't really that hard to make a really good first-person shooter. You just had to have good graphics, cool enemies, and a lot of cool weapons, and the movement had to be responsive. And also, it didn't hurt when you had really awesome rock music to accompany your gun slaughter. And this game has all of that in droves. It's like, what else would you need in a first-person shooter? This game's story, I mean, it has a story, but I don't even know what it is. I don't really care what it is. Stories don't matter in first-person shooters. And if it has a good story, good, great. I mean, some of the Call of Duty games had decent stories, but even if they didn't, who cares? I don't care. It's like a story in a racing game. It's like nice if there's a good one, but if there's not a good one, I'm not taking points off for that. Who cares? It's not an RPG. One thing I don't like about this game is the jumping is a little bit archaic. Your character doesn't seem to jump very well. But on the other side of that coin, you can play this game if you're really lazy. It seems like your character does everything automatically aside from shooting. Like, if you want to use an elevator, just step on it and it'll automatically go up. If you want to press a button, don't even bother pressing any buttons. Just come up to the button and the button automatically presses. Everything is on autopilot. This really is a first-person shooter for a lazy couch potato. I like that. Did they ever make a Quake movie? I seem to remember a Doom movie from like 10 years ago starring The Rock and I think the guy who played Judge Dredd, the recent one, the really good one. I don't remember any Quake movies. I think if there was a Quake movie, it must have been really small, like a Hue Ball straight to DVD, VHS, like $100,000 budget type of crap movie shot in front of a green screen, like starring Tara Reid and Jeff Goldblum's cousin, Tom Goldblum. One thing I really don't like about first-person shooters on consoles, and there's really nothing you can do about it, is the movement is never going to be as good as it is when you're using a mouse and keyboard. Like when you use the WASD keys and then together with the mouse, it's just such a great free range of movement. You have the perfect movement for a first-person shooter. When you have to use your directional buttons, when you have to strafe left and right with your trigger buttons, it's just not the same. And the worst thing is when you have to aim up and down with your shoulder buttons. First-person shooters, even a really good one like this, loses a lot of its luster just because you feel a little bit gimped. It's like comparing the controls of playing a game like this on the console like the PS1 versus the PC is night and day in terms of how well you move. You really are disabled compared to when you play a game like Quake on the PC. But then again, it's kind of nice to be able to play a first-person shooter without being like hunched over near your computer, like just laying in bed. Isn't that awesome? I love that for console gaming. Like, I love the fact that I can lay down in bed like I'm the laziest SOB in the world that has no care in the world and just play a video game, literally without moving, with wasting the least amount of energy possible. I mean, gaming on consoles, you can be as lazy as a sloth. Gaming on a PC, most of the time, yeah, obviously you can set up your PC to put the keyboard like on your stomach or whatever, you know, who cares? I'm talking about just how normal people play PC games. You're in the chair, you're hunched over in front of a computer. It's basically in the same position you are when you're working, if you work an office job. You're wasting a lot more energy. It just feels like you're not as relaxed as when you're just laying in bed, just flat out on the bed like a kitten sleeping. That's, I feel like, the most relaxing way to play games, even though the movement is a little bit gimped, or sometimes a lot of bit gimped. It's like the other day I was playing Neverwinter, the MMORPG, on the PlayStation 4, and I'm thinking to myself, Neverwinter reminds me a lot of World of Warcraft, which I used to play in college, but I would play, obviously, World of Warcraft on the PC. So I was hunched over on the PC, sitting there, you know, it felt a little bit like work. Even though I was having the time of my life, I was immersed in the game, it was eating up my energy. But then I'm laying in bed playing Neverwinter, I'm barely even breathing. I mean, if you took my pulse while I was playing Neverwinter, it was like 10 beats a minute. I was literally clinically dead playing Neverwinter because I was playing in bed. So that's awesome. There's definitely good aspects to playing games on the consoles that a lot of people don't even think about. Like, a lot of PC gamers are like, well, the PC is the master race. We have the best graphics. We have the best movement. And that might be the case, but there's a lot of X factors, like being a lazy bastard who can game in bed. Think about it. Think about it. There's a lot of really powerful guns, but my favorite gun isn't really that cool or unique or really as powerful as some of the other guns. It's the automatic rifle. It's not as powerful as like the super powerful shotgun that just explodes the most powerful enemies like you're shooting a rocket at them. But the automatic rifle, it feels like you're shooting a swarm of deadly bees. It's a non-stop barrage of damage. I really like that. It's like if you miss a couple of times, it doesn't even matter. Most of the bullets will hit the enemy. Something like a powerful shotgun, if you miss once, it takes a couple of seconds to reload, to aim at the enemy again. It's a whole big to-do. You have to have much better aim when you're using really powerful weapons that shoot one projectile at a time. Quake 2 is just a really well-made game. There's nothing not to love about the game if you love first-person shooters from this late 90s era. Good graphics, good music, and really fun, gruesome, bloody gameplay with a ton of weapons. It's just as good as some of the best first-person shooters from the era, or even games that are a little younger than this game. It's as good as games like Medal of Honor and Half-Life. Easily as good as those. Thanks for watching. Support the game reviews on Patreon if you like them. Subscribe for more classic game reviews. Goodbye, my friends.